My family wrote me off as a disappointment when I became a bartender, cutting me out of every event for years, until my sister's wedding, where my father mocked me in front of everyone, only to discover the tequila in his glass came from the multi-million-dollar spirits company I secretly built. I'm Julian, 31 years old, and depending on who you inquire, my profession is either a mixologist or something far more complex. My relatives favor the initial description, particularly my father, Robert. In his view, an authentic man dons a necktie, operates a luxurious German automobile, and ascends a corporate hierarchy, boasting about his newest advancement at every family gathering. You likely understand this archetype. Thus, at 22, when I left university and began tending bar, not as a temporary solution, but as a chosen vocation, he unequivocally stated my existence was a disgrace. Not through an overt rejection. That would have demanded too much exertion. He simply began to incrementally exclude me. From discussions and family portraits to the seating arrangements at festive occasions, I slowly vanished. My mother acquiesced. My sister, Tessa, mirrored their stance. Consequently, I ceased attending family events. That pattern continued until the previous weekend. Tessa's wedding, an elaborate, lavish ceremony held at a countryside estate that appeared plucked directly from a regal romance film. I received no invitation to the engagement celebration. I wasn't even informed of the bridal shower. Yet, a formal wedding invitation arrived via mail, personally addressed by my mother. Perhaps she felt a pang of guilt. Or perhaps it was because Grandpa Harold, my father's dad, the sole relative who ever truly cared about me, had threatened to boycott the event unless both his grandchildren were treated impartially. So, I confirmed my attendance. I didn't lease a tuxedo or arrive in a flashy vehicle. Just a precisely tailored dark suit, a clean shave, and an understated entrance during the cocktail reception. My intention was to remain on the periphery, offer congratulations to my sister, and depart prior to dessert. However, fate had alternative plans. The instant I stepped onto the gravel path leading toward the main hall of the venue, I caught the fading sound of a familiar laugh. My father's. I rounded the corner to find him by the bar, conversing with a collection of distant relatives and one of Tessa's new in-laws. His glass was half raised, his words already slurred. Julian. Oh, you mean the bartender? He snorted, as if the very word carried a bitter taste. He's probably mixing rum and cokes in some downtown establishment. He won't endure 10 minutes in a setting like this. They all chuckled. Even my mother. I could have retreated then, but I didn't. I tightened my jaw, straightened my posture, and proceeded as though I hadn't absorbed a single syllable. My hands trembled, not from shame, but from sheer self-control. I hadn't seen my father in over 2 years, and his initial comments about me were a mere jest. The reception hall was immense. Polished marble floors, soaring vaulted ceilings, and chandeliers substantial enough to crush a compact car. Guests in designer attire and sparkling gowns sipped champagne, laughing with effortless grace. I remained at the room's edge, observing the social machinery operate smoothly without my involvement. Then, the couple made their grand entrance. Tessa, radiant in a pully white gown, her new husband James in a finely tailored navy tuxedo. They presented a striking image. She noticed me and paused for a brief second, surprised. James didn't detect anything. Not yet. Once the introductions and toasts concluded, guests resumed mingling. James and Tessa navigated the throng, shaking hands and accepting compliments. When they reached me, Tessa offered a strained smile. Julian, I wasn't aware you would be attending. You extended the invitation. I replied calmly. Right, she said quickly, glancing away. Then James extended his hand. Pleasure to meet you. I'm James. I know, I said, shaking it. He grinned until his expression changed. His smile gradually vanished as he gazed at me. Truly stared. His grip slackened. His brow furrowed. Wait, what's your surname again? I tilted my head slightly. The same as hers. He withdrew his phone from his pocket, seemingly checking a message, but I observed his fingers moving, typing, then silence. He looked at the screen, then at me, then back again. His complexion paled. You know that look when someone realizes they've made a terrible misjudgment? That was him. He cleared his throat, tucked the phone away as if it had scorched him, and mumbled something about getting a drink. Tessa appeared perplexed. What was that about? I shrugged. Now, you're probably curious about what he perceived. What caused his sudden halt? Let's rewind a moment. Yes, I began as a bartender. But what I never disclosed to my family, not out of secrecy, but because they never bothered to inquire, is that I co-founded a craft spirits company 7 years ago. We launched small, locally, supplying niche bars and specialty shops. Then we experienced rapid growth. A few viral campaigns, a couple of celebrity endorsements, and a significant distribution agreement later, our brand exploded. By 29, I had acquired my partner's share. By 30, I had licensing agreements across 3 continents. My bar job is actually overseeing a multi-million-dollar enterprise that employs over 60 individuals. But none of this ever arose with my family because none of them ever treated me as a person worth understanding. They had solidified their perception of me years ago, the failure, the dropout, the cocktail monkey. And they never updated that narrative until now. As the evening progressed, hushed conversations began to circulate through the room. I saw James whispering to his brother, then to his father, then to a groomsman who shot me a wide-eyed glance before quickly averting his gaze. Sometime between the salad and the main course, my father approached me. "Julian," he said, his tone strangely measured. "I didn't expect to see you here." "You invited me," I repeated, my expression neutral. Right, he forced a chuckle. "So, still mixing drinks, are we?" I could have let it pass. I could have smiled, nodded, maintained the peace, but something within me snapped. "I haven't tended bar in 5 years," I stated. "But one of my creations is currently behind yours." Asked the bartender. "The tequila in your glass? That's mine." He blinked. "What?" "I own the company that produces it." He laughed. "It wasn't genuine. You're jesting." I offered no reply. I simply walked past him and approached the bar where the bartender was stacking used glasses. I waited until he noticed me. "Hey," I said. "Are you guys utilizing cakes for the house tequila?" "Yeah," he replied, brightening. "Cakes Blanco. Smooth stuff. Have you sampled it?" "I'm the founder," I said quietly. His eyes widened. "No way." I nodded once. "Way." My father had followed me. He heard every word from behind. I could practically sense his worldview fracturing like ice under immense pressure. And that's when things truly began to unravel. It didn't take long. I left my father at the bar and returned to my table. I hadn't even fully settled before I observed him across the room, whispering urgently into my mother's ear. Her eyes darted to me, then to the bartender, then back to my father, and I saw her face tighten with confusion, as if a rug had been suddenly yanked from beneath her. She stood upright, smoothed her dress, and advanced toward me with that passive-aggressive smile she always wore when she was about to pretend nothing was amiss. "Julian," she said as she arrived, brushing imaginary lint from my lapel. "What was that little anecdote you were sharing with your father?" "No anecdote," I said flatly. He inquired if I was still bartending. I told him the truth. She blinked at me as if I had communicated in code. "You own that liquor company, Cakes?" "Yes, but you never informed us." "You never inquired," I said simply. Her lips thinned. I could see her attempting to strategize how to backtrack. She glanced around, noticing the subtle looks now being directed our way. Cousins, friends, Tessa's new in-laws. They had discerned that something was unfolding, even if they didn't comprehend what. And gossip travels swiftly in a room full of unengaged people in formal attire. Especially when the outcast turns out to be something other than an outcast. My mother leaned in closer, her voice now a whisper. "You know your father dislikes being made a fool of." I looked her directly in the eye. "Then he should stop assuming he's the most intelligent person in every room." She recoiled slightly, as if I had verbally struck her. She opened her mouth, but no words emerged. Instead, she spun on her heel and walked briskly back to my father, whose face was turning crimson. "Not from the alcohol this time." And then, like some poorly timed comedic climax, Tessa approached. She stood beside me, arms crossed, appearing every inch the composed bride save for the storm brewing behind her eyes. "May I ask what's happening?" she said, her voice sharp. "James informed me you own some company." He didn't provide specifics, just said it was a major undertaking. I nodded slowly. "Cake Spirits. We supply several national chains. You've probably seen the advertisements." "Wait." She blinked. "You're that Cakes? That's your brand." "Since the beginning." Her mouth opened slightly. "Why didn't you ever mention it?" I stared at her, trying to prevent years of suppressed resentment from surfacing. "Tessa, I wasn't even invited to your engagement party. You never text me unless it's a forwarded family photo. And last Christmas you posted a picture captioned, 'The whole fam together again,' and I wasn't even in it." She flushed. I didn't intend anything by that." "Certainly," I said, my voice soft, "but that's precisely the point. None of you ever intended anything by it. That's simply how it always was." She didn't reply, just stood there in her expensive wedding gown, suddenly uncertain of which side of the social dynamic she now occupied. And right then, James returned. He was pale again, clutching his phone as if it had started bleeding. He said to Tessa, glancing at me as if I might dissolve. "Can we speak?" She frowned. "What's wrong?" He looked at me again, then leaned in and whispered something into her ear. I couldn't discern the words, but I observed her expression shift. Her jaw dropped. Her eyes darted to me, back to him, and then down at the phone he held up. Then she slowly turned back to me. "You're on Forbes?" she inquired, her voice cracking midway through the question. I nodded. "Made the 30 under 30-foot list 2 years ago. There's a video, too." James appeared as though he wished to melt into the floor. I wasn't aware of who you were when I shook your hand. I thought you were just a bartender," I offered. He nodded awkwardly. "Sorry." That's when the rest of the room started catching up. I saw a bridesmaid whisper to a groomsman. A cousin pulled out his phone, then another and another. I watched as one of them tapped through images and suddenly froze, eyes wide. He turned the phone around to show someone else. My name, my photograph, an article headline, "The bartender who built a liquor empire." And just like that, I was no longer invisible. People began approaching, a few politely at first, soft congratulations, inquiries about how I established the business, whether I was expanding internationally. Then the opportunists emerged, cousins I hadn't seen in years. Aunt Meredith, who once told me I was squandering my potential. Even Uncle Greg, who had laughed the loudest when my father labeled me a failure, now shaking my hand as if we were old friends. It was as if I had stepped into an alternate reality. But the most satisfying part, the expression my father wore as he observed it all unfold from the edge of the room. He looked like a man watching his own film, except he was no longer the central character. He wasn't even featured in the scene. My mother kept attempting to whisper things in his ear, but he waved her off, too stunned to formulate a coherent sentence. His glass was full again. He wasn't drinking it. I didn't approach him. I didn't need to. Instead, I answered a few more polite questions, offered a quiet farewell to Tessa, and slipped out just before the cake cutting. I didn't need to remain. My presence had already achieved its purpose. But what transpired after I departed? That's the part that truly stings for them, anyway. I didn't anticipate what came next. Honestly, I believed I had made a clean exit. I wasn't seeking some dramatic confrontation or a mic drop moment. I simply wanted them to see me, truly see me, for once in their lives. Not the dropout, not the family disappointment, just me. But it turns out, you can't simply unleash a truth bomb like that into a room full of egos and expect the dust to settle quietly. The following morning, I awoke to 10 missed calls from an unidentified number. I assumed it was a telemarketer until I checked the voicemail. It was James. "Hey, Julian. It's James. Sorry to call so early. I think we should talk. It's about your dad." I sat up in bed. The next message arrived a few minutes later. His voice was quieter this time. "Listen, I know things were strange last night, but something happened after you left. Your mom and dad, they kind of blew up, like, in front of everyone. I didn't want to say anything until we could speak. Can you call me back?" I didn't. Not immediately. Instead, I accessed social media, and there it was. A short, shaky video, no more than 20 seconds, posted by one of Tessa's friends. You could barely hear over the music, but the captions narrated the story. "Father of the bride loses it during speech, storms out mid-reception." The comments were merciless. Apparently, sometime after I left, my father had attempted to deliver a toast. The kind he used to give at every family gathering back when he still envisioned himself as the head of the table. But this one didn't resonate the same way. Not with whispers flying around the room. Not with half the guests now looking me up on their phones. One comment read, "He started saying how proud he was of Tessa for marrying into such a promising family." Then someone, I think the groom's cousin, asked why he never mentioned his successful son. The guy turned red and just walked off mid-sentence. Another heard someone say, "At least the bartender made Forbes." I thought he was going to throw a chair. I couldn't help it. I chuckled, not because I was petty though, okay, perhaps a little, but because for the first time, the narrative wasn't his to command. He couldn't bury me under his disapproval any longer. I'd outgrown the confinement. My phone buzzed again. This time it was a text from Tessa. "Julian, did you really have to humiliate him like that?" I stared at it for a minute, then typed back. "Me? I didn't humiliate him. I answered a question. The truth did the rest." She didn't reply. That same afternoon, I received an unexpected visitor, Grandpa Harold. Now, Grandpa has always been reserved, a man of few but impactful words. When I opened the door and saw him standing there with a paper bag and a weary smile, I stepped aside without a word. We sat in my kitchen. He pulled out a bottle, one of mine, and 2 glasses. "I figured if I'm drinking your tequila, I should do it with the man who made it," he said. I smiled. "I thought you didn't drink anymore. I make exceptions when my family finally gives me something to toast to." We sipped in silence for a moment before he leaned back in his chair. "I saw what happened last night. Your father, he's not accustomed to being second place, and he certainly isn't accustomed to being wrong." I nodded slowly. He always wanted to be the loudest voice in the room, and now he isn't. Grandpa said, "You didn't need to raise your voice. You just showed up." He looked at me with those clear, steady eyes of his. "You did well, kid. That meant more to me than any apology from my father ever could. But the repercussions weren't finished. Later that week, a cousin I barely spoke to, Lisa, messaged me. She expressed a desire to reconnect. Said she was contemplating a career change and had always admired my industriousness. A day later, Uncle Greg emailed me a business proposal. No kidding. Said he had a brilliant concept for a luxury gin line and wished to collaborate. I ignored both. But the real surprise arrived on Friday. I received a certified letter. Initially, I thought it was legal correspondence. Perhaps my father attempting some maneuver, but no, it was from James. A formal, handwritten letter. He desired a private meeting. No Tessa, no family, just the two of us. And he made it clear in the letter. There's something you deserve to know about your family and your father. I read that line 3 times because up until that point, I thought the only thing I deserved was an apology they'd never offer. But maybe, just maybe, there was more. Something concealed, something they didn't want me to discover. And suddenly, the story wasn't over. It was merely beginning. I didn't rush into that meeting with James. I allowed a few days to pass. Partly because I wasn't certain I wanted to know what he was withholding, and partly because I needed time to reflect. After everything that had transpired, the wedding, the whispers, the flood of insincere smiles, and sudden interest, I wasn't sure if I was prepared to delve any deeper into the family dynamics. I'd spent a decade maintaining a distance. But eventually, curiosity prevailed. I texted him a time and place. A small coffee shop in the city, the kind of establishment where nobody would recognize us and no one would eavesdrop. James was already there when I arrived. Still in a crisp blazer, hair neat, posture erect. He stood when he saw me and offered a cautious smile, as if uncertain which version of me would appear, the quiet disappointment or the man whose name had made headlines that week. I sat down across from him and didn't waste time. What do you wish to convey? He hesitated, glanced around, then leaned in, as if we were exchanging secrets in a spy film. Your dad, he said, wasn't just disparaging you at the wedding. He's been doing it for years. I raised an eyebrow. Yes, I had suspected as much. No, Julian, he said, lowering his voice. He's been deliberately deceiving everyone, me, my family, Tessa, even your own extended family. We believed you were barely making ends meet, as if you were working odd jobs, residing in some shabby apartment above a dive bar. I felt my jaw tighten. And you all just believed him? He didn't flinch. Yes, because he spoke with conviction. And because every time your name arose, he'd change the subject or laugh or recount some story about how you couldn't maintain employment or never completed anything you started. That part wasn't novel, but it still felt like a physical blow. James continued, but after I researched you, after I realized who you actually were, I asked Tessa if she knew. She didn't. She was stunned. And when she asked your parents, well, he took a breath. Robert didn't deny it. He just said, he's not like the rest of us. I had to protect the family from his failure. I stared at him. Protect the family? I repeated. From me? James nodded. It was absurd. He behaved as though you were some blemish on their legacy. But the truth is, I think he knew how successful you were becoming. I think he knew before we did, and he couldn't tolerate it. I sat back in my chair, the words churning in my head. All those years, I'd assumed they simply didn't care. But they did, just not in the way I'd hoped. My father had been actively rewriting my story behind my back, transforming me into a cautionary tale to elevate his own image. A failed son, a disappointment to be pitted, not celebrated. James slid something across the table. A manila envelope. What's this? I asked. Proof, he said. Emails, messages, even one where your mom told my mom you were working at a rundown bar near Skid Row. That was just last year. She actually said you were one missed paycheck away from asking for help. I opened the envelope slowly, pulling out a stack of printed emails and screenshots. I skimmed through them, each one more ludicrous than the last. Outright falsehoods, fabrications. Some even included photos of me from years ago. One of me in a dingy t-shirt during a distillery installation. Another where I was behind a bar, smiling for a promotional shoot, used as evidence of how badly I was doing. I figured you should see them, James said. I didn't know how else to make this right. I looked up. Why are you doing this? He shrugged, shame in his eyes. Because I'm married into this family, and I didn't realize how much decay was hidden beneath the surface. And because I saw your face at the wedding and realized I've never seen someone look so calm while everyone else scrambled to catch up. I stared at the papers again, then folded them back into the envelope. Thanks, I said quietly. I'll hold on to this. We said goodbye. No handshake this time, just a nod. And when I stepped out into the sunlight, I felt strange. Not angry, not even surprised, just clear. Like the final puzzle piece had clicked into place. I didn't go home right away. Instead, I drove out to the suburbs, back to the house I hadn't set foot in for years. The house where I'd grown up, been dictated who to be, and eventually discarded like a failed experiment. My mother's car was in the driveway. So was my father's. I rang the doorbell. My mother answered, wearing her usual polished smile. The kind she used to welcome church friends or neighbors she secretly gossiped about. The moment she saw me, the smile faltered. "Julian," she said, voice tight. "What are you? Is Dad home?" She didn't move. "Why?" "I want to talk." A moment passed. Then she stepped aside. "He's in the study." I found him at his desk, reading something on his tablet. He didn't look up when I walked in. "Look who finally decided to come home," he muttered, still scrolling. "I'm not here for a reunion," I said. "I'm here to tell you that I know about the lies, the stories you've been spreading, about the emails, the fake narratives, everything." He froze slowly. He set the tablet down and looked up at me. "I don't know what you think you know." I tossed the envelope onto his desk. He didn't open it. "You spent years trying to erase me," I said, keeping my voice calm. "But I didn't disappear. I built something real. And you couldn't handle that, could you? Because it meant admitting you were wrong." He said nothing. "You told everyone I was a failure, that I was barely surviving, that I'd embarrassed the family. But the only embarrassment in this house is the man who thought lying about his own son made him more respectable." His mouth opened, but I cut him off. "I'm not here to argue. I'm not here to scream. I'm here to let you know that whatever twisted version of me you've created, that ends today. The real story is out. And you can either accept that or spend the rest of your life pretending you didn't raise a man more successful than you'll ever be." He flinched at that. "Good. I'm done trying to earn your respect. You lost the right to give it." With that, I turned and walked out. My mother tried to stop me in the hall, stammering something about how things got misunderstood. I didn't even look at her. I left the house for the last time. That was 8 months ago. Since then, things have shifted. Not because I forced them to, but because I stopped playing along with their script. Tessa reached out a few times. Apologies, lengthy messages, guilt-ridden paragraphs about how she never realized how deep the favoritism ran. I responded politely, but I didn't go out of my way to repair anything. Maybe one day, maybe not. James and I stayed in occasional contact. I respect that he told me the truth. I don't trust him. Not fully, but I respect him. As for my parents, I haven't heard a word. No calls, no emails, nothing. But a few weeks ago, I received an alert that someone had requested a meeting with my company's legal team. An anonymous inquiry about licensing fees and brand use, traced back to a small consulting firm run by, you guessed it, Uncle Greg. I declined the request. That same day, I donated a substantial sum to a nonprofit that funds hospitality scholarships for low-income students. The donation was made in my father's name. A week later, I received a letter in the mail. No return address, just 2 words inside. Why? I smiled. Because some legacies you inherit, others you construct. And mine is better than anything they could have conceived.